Hey guys, I'm going to make a quick video about gimbal lock. The first part of the video is going to be about like why it happens and how to make it happen. And then the second part of the video is about how to avoid it. So if you already know what it is and how it happens to you, you're just looking for a workaround, you can just skip to the second part of the video. But first to address what gimbal lock is. Gimbal lock occurs when you have axes on a joint that get moved so close to each other that Maya doesn't know kind of how to achieve some movements. Okay. In this particular case, you'll notice that I have the gimbal viewer selected, and I'm holding Control and Shift in order to pick between, say, object, world, and gimbal. There are others, but this is the relevant one for here. So when I use gimbal mode, which is the most accurate view of where the joints are oriented, you'll notice something interesting. The character began in a position like this, right? Where I have my y-axis, I have my x-axis, I have my blue z-axis over here. And each of these are separated and they can move. This is very close to the character's default position. I've got her body rotated a little bit, so it's a little bit off. But you'll notice at this point I have pretty accurate and free movement to go any direction that I wanted to. But I started the animation by the character reaching forward here to put her arm out in front of her. And what do you immediately notice is a problem? Well, these two axes are really close to each other. Well, sure, we can suspect that's a problem, but what's a really practical problem? For the next move, let's say I wanted to raise her arm up above her head. Well, how do I do it? I can't. There's no... My z-axis and my x-axis have been squished over here, and my y-axis is here. Well, how can I have her raise her arm in the way that a real human would be able to do? I can't. But that's only when viewing it through the gimbal mode, the accurate mode. Most of us usually spend our time in object mode or world mode. Notice in object mode, oh wait, there it is. There's my z-axis. Well, sure, that solves the problem. I can do that, right? Well, here's the issue. The object mode and the world mode are user interface shortcuts that allow us to make these decisions. But under the hood, Maya can get really confused in these moments because it has to figure out a way to have made that move happen when the axes weren't aligned in a way that was possible. So let's say that I go a couple of frames forward and make a little movement, and then I want to have her raise her arm back down. Lower it down, and then, I want to go over a little bit, and then I want to have her raise it back up. Well, the things I just animated were raise the arm, lower the arm, raise the arm, right? Should be pretty simple. That's all she should do. But look at our animation. Wait. Oh God, that's not what I did. Why is that happening? That's what gimbal lock is. That's when we try to do these complex rotations like dances and Tai Chi positions. The character does these weird movements and our limbs are freaking out and we're like, wait, that's not what I animated. Why is this happening? Well, one quick thing you can do is use a Euler filter, which will try to get rid of that. And a lot of times it works, but it doesn't always work. And as you're animating, it's not addressing the source of what's happening. It's using math to try to fix it, but it's not actually getting at the heart of it. When Euler filter works, great, you're done. When it doesn't work, that's going to create big problems that can be really hard to solve. It's going to make you go in one frame at a time to animate. And sometimes that might be easy, but sometimes it might be a big, long sequence, and it takes a really long time to do that. Okay, so let me show you one method that you can use, which will greatly reduce the instances of gimbal lock that you get. So, hidden in your character's rig, normally not visible to you, is this control up here in the channel box when you have your joint selected, in this case, Stella's left shoulder, the blue shoulder. She also has one on the right shoulder. And this is gimbal control visibility. It's usually set to off, but you'll see here I have it turned on. And when I have it turned on, this extra tab appears here in my GUI picker. And even if you don't have a GUI picker, if you zoom in close enough, you'll see there's now a second interior darker blue circle in addition to the normal shoulder controller. Okay, and that's how you access it. A lot of people use this gimbal control as an offset, and it's a great use of it. You can also use it in order to help you avoid gimbal lock, which is probably actually the original intention for it. So there's a certain way that you set that up that's pretty important. If I click on the main shoulder controller, you'll see that if I go to my channel box, or if I go to my attribute editor, for my FK upper left arm, you'll see that I have, in this case, my rotation order set to X, Y, Z. The shorthand that I want you to understand here is that the middle one is the weak one. Your X and your Z can be manipulated. The 1 and 3, first and last, can be manipulated without many problems. The middle one is where you're going to get in trouble, and let me show you why. Again, as we've seen in this position, that when I moved from my original rotation using the Y-axis, which is the weak axis in this rotation order, it's moving my X-axis very close to my Z-axis. And that's where now I've lost my ability to rotate my Z or X in a way that allows her to raise her arm. Well, in order to get around this problem, when I now click on my gimbal, you'll see that I have my rotation order set to Y, X, Z. So I've taken the weakest rotation axis on my main controller, and I've made it the strongest rotation axis on my gimbal. And that means that I can rotate on the Y, and it doesn't affect the other ones. You'll notice also that Z, which was the second strongest, the last one, the second strongest, in both the regular controller and the gimbal controller, I can use the Z-axis in either of them without creating problems. So Z becomes very safe. You'll notice that in either case, when I use the Z-axis, it moves the entire controller. It rotates everything together, keeps them separated, but moves everything. Whereas when I use the strongest of the 3 axes, nothing moves at all. So what I've done is given myself a way to approach the Z-axis on this side without running into the problem that I was running into here on the main controller. And so if we do some tests, let's do some animation tests here using the gimbal. Let's see if we run into the same big problems that we were running into before. And you'll see that we don't. She actually moves her arm up and down the way that I wanted her to. And so you might think from just watching that demonstration, oh, well, I should just always use gimbal. The problem is the gimbal also has a weak rotation now. It has this X-axis is the weak rotation, so I can approach gimbal lock now by using the X-axis. Now my Y and my Z have been so moved close to each other that will also create some problems for me. If I want her to rotate her arm this way using the gimbal control, I can't do it. So moving this back to a safe position, this is when I would switch over to this controller. To try to use rotations that are available to me there. So in this particular case, I'll Oh, it's interesting. And this one, if I wanted to do this, I could just do it here. But you'll run into places where, for example, if I come over here and I want to have her come across her body, well, remember, we don't want to use the x-axis in this one because it approaches gimbal lock. So that's when I would go back to my main one and I would use the x-axis here over on this side. And it's probably worth noting that I never would have been really quite in this position because I wouldn't have done this from the beginning. But all these axes are available to me in ways that should be functional. She should be moving up and down, and then she'll come over to the side, and then she'll go up. Yep. And so it all works. I did not get gimbal lock. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. I know that's kind of a long video. I'll mark kind of in the video where you can skip to that second part. All right. Well, I hope that's helpful for you.